Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today I will be explaining the previous week that I have backtested. It is a weekly breakdown video and I will be breaking down the third week of March, as we can see, starting from 18th of March. And let me quickly show you the news before doing anything. So Monday there is no news, Tuesday there is no news, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday there are huge amount of news. As you can see, Wednesday, London there is news, and New York there is news. Thursday there is news on London and also New York. And also Friday there is news on London and New York. So the only high probability day to trade will be Monday and Tuesday because there is no news. And yeah, also on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday we'll watch the markets, we'll watch everything, the same thing. But according to my backtesting, according to my experience in the markets, I have seen that whenever there is high impact news, the markets are high likely to be manipulated and your setups don't play out as usual as when it does when the market doesn't have any news, right? So let me quickly start from the weekly. So before starting, let me show you the call out. Okay, this call out I've shown a gazillion of times. You can see, you can read it by yourself. And yeah, now let's start the weekly analysis from the weekly time frame. So my bias was clearly bearish for the next week because of how this weekly candle closed. My bias, I select my bias, weekly bias, by watching the previous weekly candle, what it has done. So that's it. I don't overcomplicate it. I don't overcomplicate my weekly analysis. And this is the supply zone which I have marked from a decade now, I guess, from a decade. And this change of character is the proof that this supply zone is valid. And yeah, the market also literally consolidated from this supply zone, and now it is again going to the upside. And yep, now for now it is clearly showing me that this supply is getting respected, and this was my draw of liquidity on GU if my bias was bearish. So the same opposite thing, we will look for the opposite thing on USD, which is this demand zone. The market is either going from a demand to supply to demand. So now for now it is coming from some sort of supply to this demand again, to this weekly demand. And you can argue that this is the supply on the weekly, but this supply is not one of the strongest because there is no market structure shift, because this is the low and this is the high. The market is still trending between these zones. So that is the reason I have not marked this supply, and I have marked the daily supply instead right here, right? So you also have to keep that small things in mind, because this is very important, right? And yeah, according to how this candle closed on the weekly, next week my bias for DXY will be bullish. As I've written here, DXY bias bullish, GU bias bearish, right? So that is when I go lower to the lower time frames like daily to see my daily bias and start the weekly breakdown video. So going on Monday, my bias will be bearish according to how this Friday candle close. My weekly and daily bias are aligning, being bearish. You can argue that there is a fair value gap here, but until and unless the price shows me that it wants to go and fill up this fair value gap, I will not consider it. The same sort of thing on DXY. There is a fair value gap to the downside to fill, you can argue, but obviously we need the price to show us proof that it wants to go down, show us intention that it wants to go and fill up that fair value gap, right? So if that doesn't happen, I will anticipate this supply zone to get mitigated, because right now the market is going from this demand to this supply on the daily time frame. So it is so clean. So going on Monday, I'm looking for buys. That is when I go to the lower time frames. And if I'm looking for sells on GU, then I will look for some sort of change of character on the 4-hourly. You can argue that the market was trending from this low to this high, just like on the weekly it is doing. So there is no break of structure or change of character with huge volume. So I will not consider this and go to the hourly time frame instead to look for something. So on the hourly time frame, this was the supply zone I was looking to trade from. I will not tell you why I marked this supply zone or anything. On the DXY also, I will only go for bias selection, because it will be a very big video if I show everything, right? It will be an hourly long video, and in today's world the people doesn't have that attention span, right? We know that. So let me quickly tell you, I was looking for this some sort of sells, right? On Monday I was looking for sells, so obviously this was the supply zone which created this break of structure here. This is the break of structure caused by this supply zone, so this supply zone is valid. And yeah, I was looking for Asian high sweep, previous structural liquidity sweep, supply mitigation, and then the move. Typical setup, which did happen, and we took the entry here on the M15. After this M15 rejection, we took the entry with a 7 pip stop loss, 1:3 risk to reward, and also there was SMT between GU and DXY. And this trade, if you wanna learn this trade in detail, then I have made a separate breakdown video about this trade. And yeah, the rest is history. It plays out to the T. So Monday was a winning day, as you can see right here. So that is when I go to the daily time frame again to watch the bias for Tuesday. So Monday closed kind of bearish candle, or a doji candle you can say, and it has not shown any signs of reversal yet, right? So until and unless the price shows me reversal, I will not predict that it will go up from here. I will do what the price is doing, right? So on DXY also, if I look for the bias on Tuesday, it clearly the bias is buys on DXY. That will be sells on GBP USD. And also on Tuesday there was no news. If I go to my economics calendar, there was no GBP news. And also, if I am looking for sells, I will look for change of characters. I've told there is no change of character as yet. You can argue on the 4 hourly, no clean change of character, so I will not mark. I need a change of character to happen with huge volume, which didn't happen, so that was the reason I didn't mark those zones. And if I was looking for sells on Tuesday, I would look for Asian high sweep and some sort of supply here, which I didn't, I guess. Yep, I didn't got any trades on Tuesday. That is the reason you can see I have not done anything. This was a continuation setup, but also we didn't got a continuation setup. If I did got a beautiful continuation setup, obviously I would have marked, right? The fact that I didn't mark anything, that means that I didn't got the trade. Always remember, the fact that I didn't mark anything, that means the market was not clean and just our setup didn't appear on that day, and that's totally fine. So according to how this Tuesday candle closed, as you can see, it's clearly a bullish candle now. This is not a bearish candle from any side. And if this is bullish, so obviously on Wednesday, now going on Wednesday, I'm looking for buys to fill up this fair value gap on the daily. That was what I was looking for. And also on DXY, not one of the cleanest, but still a rejection from the upside. And yeah, going on Wednesday, my bias was not clear, so it's a very low probability day to trade. And also on Wednesday there is CPI news, GBP, and USD 11:30 p.m. news. So yeah, that 11:30 p.m. news doesn't bother me that much, but the CPI news is a very high impact news, as we know. And if I'm looking for buys now, I need a change of character, which did happen here on the hourly. This was the change of character, so I would look for buys from this sort of demand, right here, which did happen. But also this was CPI news, so CPI, I didn't trade the CPI, I remember. As you can see, I didn't took the trade on Wednesday also, because not trading is trading, as we know, as I've told you a gazillion of times now. Not trading is a skill, bro. If you can preserve your capital, that is when you are gonna become a profitable trader. Look here, Monday we won the trade, right? So Tuesday and Wednesday, no need to rush a trade. Clearly we can see there is news, so why do you wanna force a trade when there is news, and especially news like CPI? CPI is when you want to stay away from the markets for some time, because it's very high impact news. And on Thursday you can see from 1:45 p.m. onwards, which is London session, after the London session has started, literally the whole day there was news. On Thursday, so also a low probability day to trade. But also it is not CPI or NFP, so we could have looked for something. I guess I will look. As you can see on the daily, this fair value gap got filled to the T, and yeah, after this fair value gap got filled, it didn't show any signs of rejection from this fair value gap, so this fair value gap is now irrelevant. And on DXY also a huge bearish candle closure happened, so Thursday I'm going with a bias of being bearish. It's either I don't trade because it is now against my weekly bias being bullish on DXY, or I either don't trade or I go with the trend. And on DXY it also made sense to go and fill up this fair value gap. So also keeping that in mind, and also we know that there's very high impact news throughout the day. And yeah, so on the 4 hourly also there was change of character. I don't know why I'm not marking the change of characters. Was the change of character on the 4 hourly to the upside. And yeah, the most closest zone was this H1 fair value gap right here. And after the Asian range has closed, obviously we wait for the Asian range to close, right? So after the Asian range is closed, even on Thursday I didn't took any trade. Because why I didn't took this trade, any trade? Because I didn't got any trade, bro. If I don't get any trade, so how am I supposed to trade, right? I didn't got any trade, so I didn't took any trade. So the moment that I started watching the markets, watching the price action at hourly and the 4 hourly, 4 hourly is important because there are so less 4 hour candles. So obviously watching at the 4 hourly will give you so much more confidence in your trade. And also on the hourly, if you watch the price action on the hourly, it will literally remove all the bad trades, all the inducement, right? Look, if you were watching the market on the 15, you might have entered here, right? You might have entered here, you would have targeted 1:3 and you would have lost clearly. But if you would have watched the market on the hourly, clearly this is not a move which you want to see. And yeah, you would have avoided this loss. I marked this H1 fair value gap which got filled to the T, and which was not respected at all. And yeah, that's very important on the markets to watch out for. And also now the change of character again happened to the downside. So going on Friday, let's see what I was looking for. Look, the price action is a roller coaster, as we can see. Monday I was looking for sells, Tuesday was looking for sells, Wednesday looking for buys, Thursday looking for buys again, but sales happened. So Friday, now again I'm looking for sells on GU and looking for buys on DXY, as you can see. So our bias can change like that in 1 week. So you have to be very careful while trading these kinds of market conditions. And going on the H4, now there was a change of character again to the downside. So if I'm looking for sales, I need change of characters, right? The H4 change character to the downside. There was a huge H4 fair value gap which can get filled. That is when I go to the lower time frames like hourly to mark my closest zones. So the closest zone after the Asian range is closed, obviously after the Asian range is closed, and the Asian range was also not that small, as you can see. It was a 40 pips Asian range, I guess. Yep, 40 pips. So if I'm looking for sells, then the most ideal case scenario will be Asian high sweep, this fair value gap fill, and then a move like that, right? So that was what I was looking for. And yeah, so that didn't happen. So when I have seen that huge selling pressure is happening, so we also know that continuation setup happens, and Thursday closed as a very bearish candle, as we have seen. So also there was news on 12:30, which is retail sales. So this week overall, and I have also noticed that whenever there is news like GBP and USD news throughout the week, there is a low probability week to trade. So this was a low probability week to trade. So we got our trade on Monday, so we are happy, we are out, we don't force a trade. So on Friday there was retail sales, all day Euro news, and whenever there is all day Euro news, we know that whole day the markets are high probability to be manipulated. And this was a trade on M15 which was very unclean. This you can see it. If we are taking continuation setup, this was a supply zone I was looking to trade from, and at least at this fair value gap fill, and this would be ideal. But if you would have taken a trade here with a 9 pip stop loss, you could have got a 1:3, but this is not real, bro. In the live markets you couldn't enter this trade because it is not clean enough, and if you did enter this trade, it would be a mistake. Sometimes winning is a mistake, right? We know that. So yeah, overall this week was not one of the best, but yeah, we did got our trade on Monday and we did follow our plan, which is important. So going on the next week, that now my bias is clearly bearish, and the next backtest will be very interesting, just like this backtest. And continue watching my videos, you'll get to learn a lot of things.